what if the degeneracy and nihilism we're seeing in Gen Z today isn't a lack of character, but a logical reaction to a mathematically broken money system? I'm joined by Halston Valencia, a voice for Gen Z who realized mid-college that the traditional path, the degree, the job, the house, was a lie that was sold to her generation. Halston breaks down why young people are finally questioning the morally broken system that they were bred to serve. And wait until you hear Halston's take as to why having children has become a luxury for her peers and why Bitcoin restores hope for a stable future. All right, let's dive in. Halston Valencia, welcome to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy you're here. I think it is necessary. There are more women in Bitcoin, but also more younger people. And so I think you are the perfect person to talk to in that sense. Of course, I focus on millennials. You're really focused on Gen Z. So maybe for the older listeners, can you explain, kind of like maybe the emotions that Gen Z has around this financial nihilism, this kind of, lack of hope for the future, the whole degeneracy trend, etc. Do you think people get into Bitcoin because of greed, like number go up, or do you think more people are just starting to realize, okay, I actually need to switch money?
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with number go up, if I'm being completely honest. And that's kind of how it started for me as well. I saw it as an investment at first, an investment that was better than the S&P 500, better than any cryptocurrency that I had seen. And so, yeah, I think we can see the negative effects of broken money in my generation's degeneracy. We see it with people just partying every weekend, not really having any meaning to life, people giving up on marriage and parenthood. So many of my friends from college have said that they just want to never have kids because they don't think they're ever going to be able to afford it. And I think that's so sad that now having children has become almost like a luxury, because it starts with stability. And if a Gen Z, a young person, is struggling to pay rent and just make ends meet on a month-to-month basis, how are they ever going to be able to look out to the future and develop that long-term thinking, that low time preference mentality? And so, yeah, I think a lot of the people that are now shifting into Bitcoin that are a part of my generation start with seeing it as an investment, as a number go up. And that's why we're seeing all these crazy X posts and people just being like, what's happening with the price of Bitcoin? Because they haven't fully adopted the Bitcoin mindset and adopted those principles that Bitcoin teaches. And so I'm okay with people seeing it as an investment at first, because I think that's kind of just the necessary bridge. At least it was for me. And then once you start to like really just indulge into those Bitcoin books and podcasts like this one, then you realize like, whoa, this is so much more than just number go up. This is like a solution to 50 years of brokenness. And so, yeah, I think, I'm bullish on my generation's ability to recognize that. I don't think it's going to be immediate, especially not when we're seeing so much FUD and crazy things. And I just saw this morning, like people saying that Epstein is Satoshi. And so, yeah, I think things like that doesn't really help, but.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've talked to some people in your generation, right? And they kind of feel like there's like 50% of people are just totally nihilistic. They don't really care. Everything is fake and broken and stupid and going to shit anyway. And then there's like this other half that is actually really good at, I think, poking through all the fakeness, right? I think even Gen Z is the first generation that realizes, okay, smartphones are messing up my brain, etc. Yeah. And like Gen Z getting dumb phones and stuff like that. So I think that divergence is quite interesting. But then when you talk to like your generational peers, or when you try to orange pill someone, or at least have that conversation about money, what do you think is the biggest mental block that others have? Is it like Bitcoin is a scam, it's old, or whatever? Or is it like, money is fake anyway, I don't really care about money and all that stuff, everything is broken?
I think the biggest hurdle is, especially with people who have had a financial education, say like people I went to college with, is they haven't understood Bitcoin as a separate asset from traditional cryptocurrencies. And so when they think of Bitcoin, the first thing they think of is just like cryptocurrencies as a whole, as a way to trade and make fast cash. And so I think, yeah, especially within women, I think that's the first thing that they usually say is like, oh, like, am I going to lose a ton of money? When do I know, like when to sell, or like when's the best time to buy? Like, or another thing too that I see a hurdle is unit bias. And so a lot of people have said like, oh, well, I would rather buy Ethereum because I can afford to buy more of it than buying like one whole Bitcoin. And so, yeah, I think when it comes to education, I try to, break down like Satoshis and the fact that you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin, or even just like by starting with understanding Bitcoin as a scarce asset compared to like Ethereum, XRP, Solana, all these other altcoins that are useless and that are, in my opinion, more centralized. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the biggest hurdle in orange pilling, and especially with my generation, because for so many years we've seen it as a crypto that you trade and get rich from. And I think that there's this strong desire within my generation to just get rich quick. It's like you see so many people wanting to become influencers for that very reason. So many people wanting to do day trading to get fiat as quickly as possible, because we're facing immediate turmoil, and life has just gotten so expensive for us, especially if you're someone like me who's post-grad, you have student loans, and then it's like, okay, well, all the jobs are in the big cities, and all the big cities have very high rent. And so it's like 50 to 65% of your paycheck is going to rent. And it's like, no wonder our generation is seeing Bitcoin as, or a lot of our generation is seeing Bitcoin as this like get rich quick asset, rather than, no, like this is a solution. This entire network is a solution to so many problems. And I think we see that degeneracy across industries, and especially with prediction markets and all of that.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting, right? Like you still want to follow this path to a degree, and then when you realize it's perhaps not really possible, then it's kind of logical that people are pushed towards this way to see quick opportunities, try to get rich, etc., because there is this necessity to have money, right? Because if you don't have the money, you cannot follow this path that you I think you want to follow, probably, or maybe mapped out for yourself already, and then you kind of see that is not possible. How do you kind of connect that very high time preference, because that need is very clear, right? To, I think, eventually when you get Bitcoin, there's a really low time preference. But I also understand that me in my 30s, I have I was mid 20s when I got into Bitcoin, right? But when you're like 21, how can you ask someone like that to have a low time preference? How do you how do you think through that, or maybe also how do you talk through that? Because I don't know if I could have accepted that as a 21-year-old.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and there's a level of maturity that needs to be present in oneself to recognize that you have that high time preference mindset and customs. I think that's kind of like the first step is, I'm like a huge Mallers fan, and I always hear him say, like, understanding Bitcoin takes swallowing your pride and humbling yourself. Like, the first thing you have to realize is I'm doing all of these high time preference things and participating in degenerate activities because there is this bigger problem. There's this overarching problem. And so that's kind of like the first thing that I'll usually say when I'm talking to my friends about Bitcoin. It's like, listen, you have this lost hope and this depressing mindset because the money is broken. And the system, I was going to say it's broken, but it's not really broken. It's working as designed, but it's a morally broken system. And so to feel this way, you're not crazy. This is completely valid, but there is a way out. And that way out is by starting to adopt this low time preference mindset. And I don't usually say low time preference because they're like, what the heck? What do you mean by that? Like, speak English. And so I usually say, like, maybe have you ever thought maybe the reason you feel depressed and have anxiety is because you're struggling month to month? I mean, most of my friends that are post-grad, I have a lot of friends living in New York, they have great jobs in finance on Wall Street, and they can't even survive off of the one salary. And so they're picking up dog walking shifts, they're picking up bartending shifts just to make ends meet.
When it comes to holding Bitcoin securely, peace of mind starts with architecture. OnRamp's multi-institution custody model distributes control access across 3 independent regulated key holders in a 2 of 3 multi-sig quorum. No single point of failure, no pooled or omnibus exposure, just segregated client-titled vaults. You retain full legal ownership while OnRamp coordinates security, compliance, and operational workflows behind the scenes. Multi-institution custody is the foundation for everything that OnRamp builds. Sound infrastructure that distributes counterparty risk and provides fault-tolerant resilience with clear audits and institutional controls. And now OnRamp is piloting flat, predictable pricing to make best-in-class Bitcoin custody and financial products more accessible than ever. Visit onrampbitcoin.com to learn more and sign up with code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. OnRamp, strength in many, simplicity in one. Hey there, just a quick note before we continue. The podcast has really been growing and I'm super grateful for that. Over 70,000 people tune in regularly, but I've also seen that about 60% of you still haven't subscribed yet. So if you enjoy what I'm doing, if you think the content is valuable, I want to ask you to subscribe on YouTube and please like any video that you find value in. This really helps me to fuel the YouTube algorithm and also to reach more people with the message on Bitcoin. I want to thank you for your support. Now let's continue.
And so I start with that and like, listen, if you just adopt this mindset that I can't keep giving my cash to this greedy machine, I need to put it in something else that's actually going to preserve your wealth and not get devalued every year. I think explaining that is kind of the hard part, because if people think Bitcoin's a scam in the first place, it's like, it's hard to get them there. But once they understand Bitcoin as like it's not a scam, like this is a very real thing, it's capped at 21 million, it becomes a lot easier to explain like all of the things that you're feeling and the things that you're participating in on the weekends, because you feel so just empty inside. And like, for me, I'm a Christian, and I would say my faith is very strong, and so I have that, but a lot of these people don't have anything that they're really turning to. And so then adding this broken money on top of everything and not having really any kind of truth that they're pursuing, it's like, well, no wonder you're gonna, feel empty and broken and feel like there's this void when the whole world, the financial world, is built on sinking sand. And so living a fulfilling life becomes astronomically more difficult. Yeah, I think it's definitely not easy to orange pill a Gen Zer who's already kind of stuck in that mindset that like, no, this is just how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. I'd say I've had more success with like my parents' generation, because they saw a lot of the brokenness and had to live it, especially through the 2008 financial crisis. But yeah, just take it one day at a time with them, and I try to start slow, and I don't really give up, because I genuinely want everybody to participate in sovereignty and have this kind of like financial freedom, if you will.
Mm. And so can you remember what was your aha moment then, or like your breakthrough point? I can imagine there's several. I had a lot of different ones that eventually I think culminated, but what's like one thing that really blew your mind, or where you really saw it, fiat money or Bitcoin in a different way?
Yeah. So in 2023, late 2023, I was in my junior year of college, and it was right after Broken Money had just come out, I think. And someone recommended it. And so I read it, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty crazy, because we don't really talk about the content of this book in my economics classes. So then like the gears start turning a little bit, and I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And why is it that we're not really discussing? So then, put the book down, didn't read it again for a while. And then I read it a second time the following year, early 2024. And I was like, this is exactly why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. I was working 3 jobs in college. I was in 21 units. And so just like very, very busy, not making enough money to make ends meet. I mean, I was paying for this very expensive university on my own. My parents didn't really assist me in that education. And so I was struggling to pay for college, and I was like just trying to do all the things, trying to do everything that people had advised me to do, which was like get a good internship, work at the internship, do really well, and then you'll get a post-grad offer, and then you'll make a lot of money, and you'll make your college investment back in like 2-3 years. And that was just such a lie. And so I think that was the moment it clicked, when I realized, like, I am working way too many jobs and I'm in too many units, and this is all because of broken money, after I read that book. And then I started listening to podcasts, this one, Natalie Brunell's podcast, started following Jack Mallers and his podcast, and just reading all of the, the Safedine books, and just kind of fell down this rabbit hole. And I realized that was the moment I realized, like, this is literally a solution to everything I'm feeling and experiencing. Yeah, very interesting, because I think, when, like, a few years ago, I think just the whole idea of orange pilling people, like pitching the solution, etc., I think is very futile. And I've also come to realize you need to talk more about the problem first, obviously, but realizing that there's a problem comes in different ways. You know, so it could be that, I don't know, you go to the supermarket and your bread is $12, whatever. I say that jokingly, but then you're like, that's kind of strange, because in my mind, that number is a different number. Should be lower. I have the same with, for example, I was in Miami last year or the year before, and I just had like some chicken sandwich and an alcohol-free, some alcohol-free cocktail, whatever. And I had to pay like $43. And I was like, wow, this... Oh my gosh.
The amount, just the numbers, the amount doesn't compute in my head for what I just consumed, right? And so I think for some people, that is like a wake-up call. And for other people, I think what you just said, I think is interesting. You read something which you find interesting, and then... Like, one of the immediate thoughts after that is, why hasn't anyone told me this? Why do I need to read this in a random book? And I'm doing, I have classes on economy in my college, and no one ever really talks about that. And I think if you don't get there, if you don't get to that point where it's basically like, okay, I think this is weird, something is going on, or whatever, basically. Yeah. Then you cannot really continue on this journey of what I think is necessary, the knowledge, the study, the reflection, the getting humbled that you just are participating in something that you have no clue about. Yes. And this is usually also used as like this critique on Bitcoin, like, oh, you think I should study, I don't have the 1,000 hours or the whatever. But I think the issue is that it goes that deep, right? It is so deep, these beliefs or what you think you understand, but you're not really understanding, right? And not being conscious about what you're doing and participating in. It is quite deep programming. Yeah, no, it definitely is. It goes super deep. And I think after I fell into this rabbit hole, I realized, like, whoa, they're teaching all these like Canadian economics intentionally. Like, they were breeding. What I realized is that, the college I went to had really close ties with companies on Wall Street. And so they made the recruitment process very easy. So if you wanted to go work at a hedge fund, investment bank, whatever, it was really easy to get that job through the university. And so what I realized is that the way that they've created this curriculum and education is actually like by deliberate design. They literally made it this way so that you don't question any of the things that were in Broken Money or like, the Bitcoin Standard or the big print. They made it this way intentionally so that you think that 2.5% inflation is good, the Fed is good, central banks are good, so that you become a compliant employee and you go work in that corporate cubicle for 40 years and the system keeps running. And so once I understood that, that's when it was really difficult for me to just ignore this and ignore what was happening in Bitcoin. Yeah. Because it does go that deep, like you said. Yeah. It's interesting that we're also kind of lucky that we're wired in that way. I do think you need to take a little red pill before you can orange pill, right? Like there is there's this little split in the road where you have to decide, okay, yeah, like I said, I think this is weird or whatever. I'm just going to continue because I have a entry job on Wall Street and that's cool. And that's something that I've been wanting for a long time. You've spoken also about moving Bitcoin beyond crypto bro stereotype, practically speaking. I'm not really sure what a crypto bro is. I don't know if I'm a crypto bro, but
no, you're not a crypto bro.
Okay. What are your ideas on sharing this with other people? I think that is in general our biggest challenge, right? I think a lot of people listening to this are already into Bitcoin somewhat. I mean, I'm trying to play the YouTube game to reach other people, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are your ideas around that? And was that maybe just the whole crypto conflicting thing with Bitcoin, or what are your thoughts around that?
I think there is a lot of conflict when it comes to the crypto bros and Bitcoiners, I guess you would say. The way I would define a crypto bro is somebody who, at least in the States, somebody who is into cryptocurrencies for the arbitrage and for the get rich quick, for the number go up. You're not buying Dogecoin to change the world, right? And so the way I see Bitcoin is like, I buy Bitcoin for myself and for my sovereignty, but I also, I participate in the network because I do truly believe that Bitcoin will change the world. And so when it comes to orange pilling the crypto bros, I think there's an advantage because they already understand, technically speaking, how all of this works. I think the harder part is explaining philosophically why this is so much better than, say, XRP, ETH, Solana. And the way that I've gone about it in my experience has been, listen, these cryptocurrencies are rebranded tech startups. There's nothing that interesting about them. They're all the same. They're centralized. They have paid marketing teams. They have CEOs. They have founders. It's a highly centralized environment, and Bitcoin is completely decentralized. It's scarce, capped at 21 million. There's no corporate office. There's no team. There's no paid marketing. And, you could argue we have now people building on top of Bitcoin and building companies on top of Bitcoin, but that's completely different from the network itself. And so that's kind of the way that I've been trying to explain it. And I have only been successful a few times with the crypto bros. A few months ago was at a run club, and there's an XRP bro, and he's like, XRP is going to change the world. And I'm like, why? And he couldn't tell me, and so that's my opportunity to jump in and I love that you're into cryptocurrency and we're on the right track here, but this is why I think Bitcoin will change the world. And you start listing out everything that I just listed.
Funny. I always ask the XRP bros, where are the first 32,000 blocks since Genesis? And then they're like, what are you talking about, bro? And I'm like, well, this is the point. But anyway, good luck with your ISO certified thing. I also don't, I want to judge less in a sense that I also understand that this is very difficult. It took me years to really get it and see it, and also have, I would say, the patience and the actual, and it's still difficult, right? I mean, when we're recording this, we're at 74K, whatever. And I think you and I still think, sell Bitcoin for what? If something better comes along, I'm happy to get into that. So it does take a long time, especially because the programming runs so deep, but it's also quite frustrating, I would say. I just sometimes I just wish that more people would get it. Maybe not necessarily Bitcoin, but the problem first, because I think I think we could actually move very quickly if you take all the energy away from fiat money, right? And you realize that it's designed to not be beneficial to your individual prosperity, then it's quite an easy choice, I'd say, to adopt a different solution or different money in this case.
And I think I'm bullish on I feel like I've seen a lot of my generation catch on to that because, like you said, you go to Miami, you go to New York, and you spend $42 on a drink and a sandwich. And it's just this is absurd. And so I think people are finally starting to realize we're about to see, I think, some of the worst hyperinflation. And, I was just talking about the other day, when silver was ripping, and so many people are like, oh my gosh, what's happening to silver? What's happening to gold? It's booming. And they're like, yes, this is so good. I'm like, this is not good. This is what we saw in Weimar, Germany back in 1923. Right before there was a ton of hyperinflation. And so I'm like, this is a tsunami warning. This is how bad the economy and the debt problem has become, to the point where people are now turning to something that was like silver was under $30 for years, and so I think that people are finally starting to wake up, and that's why it's my life's mission to help my generation and help other people understand these signals and understand that this is not normal, and Bitcoin solves a lot of those problems that we're seeing.
Yeah. So you are also a marketer, I think, in the most distracted era in history, right?
Yeah.
How do you market a low time preference and long-term thinking in a generation that wants to have everything explained in 15 seconds?
Yeah, it's tough. I would say I've had the best experiences in real life in those in-person connections. Online, a lot of my focus is on digital and social marketing, and so it's hard to capture an individual's attention, specifically a Gen Zer who has less than 4 seconds of your time. And so, yeah, I think what I've noticed is that having really good hooks tends to work really well. For example, sometimes I'll put out like a tweet or make like an Instagram reel. It's like kind of pointing out like, you're not crazy, like kind of like validating the viewer. Like you are experiencing these sentiments because the Fed keeps printing. It's like starting with that. Then they're like, oh, like, thank you. Like, I feel great that you've now validated my emotion. And it's like they really crave that validation, because you go to college and you study business or finance or whatever, economics, and you're told the opposite. You're told that the Fed is good. You're told that they're here to save the economy, to help the economy when it's breaking. And so I think starting with, just contradicting those points that were taught in university is where I've seen success, especially on Twitter.
For my European friends that want to buy Bitcoin with ease, check out Relay. I've been a longtime fan and happy to partner up with what I think is the best Bitcoin-only platform for Europeans. They offer a super simple, beginner-friendly app with no distractions and no shitcoins. You can do a quick one-time smash buy or set up automatic purchases when you're stacking regularly. And here's the thing that matters most. Relay is 100% self-custody. Every set you hold is yours. Your keys, your coins. If you want to get started, download the app via my link below or in the description and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, at checkout to get 10% off your fees. A huge shout out to Relay for sponsoring the show. Now let's continue.
I think it's already difficult in my generation, but I think your generation is even more taught in a way that, you do Face ID with Apple, Google has all your data, you just use Venmo or you use Instacart or Postmates, whatever, you just order stuff. Like, stuff just works for you, or basically apps and people and services, they work for you, and then magically, something has happened, or something happens, or something is arranged for you. But then when we talk about Bitcoin and sovereignty, like holding your own private keys, that is actually what makes you a sovereign, which makes Bitcoin actually your property. I think is very opposed to that. What they know. Do you think that's a hard sell, or like how can you? I was thinking about this today. I don't want to go on a long rant, but it's like I was thinking about gold, for example. Right, you need third parties to verify and move and secure big amounts of gold, right? And when you think through it in a conscious way, it's like, well, there's trade-offs with everything, but is the reward bigger than the trade-off, right? That I need to do? Is that a yes or a no, right? And I think that is with everything that you do, there's a different way that different people would judge that, basically. But I think in essence, we've never really thought about this. None of us, not my generation, not your generation, because stuff just works. So there's also not really a reason to think why or like what could go wrong, or what is the trade-off I'm making so this thing magically appears here, or the bank protects my money, or whatever you do. So again, I think that also goes very deep. But there's a big step to take there. So I don't think that's not only mentally, like we talked about, sure, low and high time preference, but this is also just practically taking that responsibility. Yes, is a very, very new thing and a very scary thing, because all the other stuff you ever did didn't really ask that from you. Yeah. How do you talk about that or think through that? Maybe for yourself, and then also for what you think for your generation.
Yeah, I think for myself, the way I saw it, when I first started learning about Bitcoin, it was definitely novel because you don't hold a stock, you don't hold an ETF, you don't hold even really gold. I think people that buy gold, it's like some crazy stat, like less than 1% or less than 2% actually hold the physical bars. And so it's like usually with these kinds of assets, you don't hold them. And so it was pretty novel for me. I think thankfully we have so many educators like yourself, and I really started listening to Natalie Brunell, and she's a big advocate for Cold Card. And so the way I saw it was like, okay, in my mind, this is a novel asset. There's nothing like this, and it's completely scarce. And so the way I saw it was, if something's this scarce and this valuable, it makes sense that you would want to want to have custody over that asset. And so at first it was like a little sketchy because I didn't really know what I was doing, and I wanted to make sure that I was custodying correctly. And then you have like Trezor and CoinKite and Blockstream Jade and like all these different companies, and it was like so overwhelming at first. But I think the way that I explain this, like to my friends or to, for example, my parents, I've been trying to orange pill them for a while, is like, would you want to maybe take the extra steps to watch that video to preserve wealth that can benefit generations on end? Like for me, like, we're full of grown adults. We know how to memorize a password, and we know how to, be in control of the things that matter to us. And your wealth and your sovereignty should be at the top of that list, of that priority list. And so, yes, there might be some technical barriers when it comes to setting up something like a cold card, but you don't have to start there. I've slowly started to become a fan of BitKey because it's such a good like transition from taking it off of an exchange to custodying. And I don't really see it as like a 100% cold storage device. I see it as like a really, really secure hot wallet is the way I see BitKey. And I like BitKey because it has that like, thumbprint technology, the fingerprint technology. And my generation is like fully accustomed to that. We use it for everything. We use Face ID, like you said. And so it's a good bridge for people in my generation or even the older generation. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, how badly do you want to be a like 100% sovereign individual and make sure that the government can never come after your Bitcoin and never take your money? If you're someone like me, like I'm putting a majority of my savings into this asset, I'm going to do everything I can to protect it, right? And so, yeah, that's the kind of the way that I see it, and the way that I try to explain is like, how badly do you want to be anti-government?
What do you think we are missing in let's say current user experience of self-custody, getting this Bitcoin really in your possession? What's the if you could think about, like, you can buy on Robinhood in one click, but you also need to hold your own keys. I think that step is big, but how do you think through that? Like, what could we do better?
Yeah, I think, the easiest way to help someone understand that is like, let's just go back to like FTX, Celsius, that kind of thing. I think when you leave any kind of asset on an exchange, you're at risk. And I see this more often than not in cryptocurrency than in traditional banking. Like, my money in my JP Morgan account is not really usually at risk. It's just kind of sitting there. Whereas like, with something with crypto, you're more at risk. And so for me, it's like, let's look at these examples, and are you okay with the exchange maybe getting hacked or going down? Wouldn't you rather be in full control and full custody of that asset and that money? And so you're right, it is a big jump going from, say, Robinhood or Coinbase to maybe a hot wallet and then a cold wallet. I think the first step, even before that, is explaining that personally, I think that Coinbase is shady. I'm not a customer of Coinbase, and I'm all for the Bitcoin only exchanges. when I first started buying Bitcoin, I started with Strike and River. And then I started working for Bitcoin Well, and I realized working for a non-custodial exchange is actually, I think it opened my eyes to like, we don't even need Strike and River. We need something like Bitcoin Well that's encouraging the users to self-custody. And so because we're never able to even hold, like our technology does not permit us to hold your Bitcoin, it's forcing the user to understand self-custody right away. And I think that's what we need more of, and we need more non-custodial platforms. Bitcoin Well is growing, and I hope that, you know, we'll become the number one buying platform, because I truly think that it should just be done correctly the first time. There should be no, I think, you know, I'm always going to love Strike and River because it's such an user-friendly way to start buying Bitcoin. But I'll say, like, there's times where I bought Bitcoin and then it's like, oh, actually, I want to move it, but you can't move it for like 7 to 10 days. And to me, that goes completely against the Bitcoin ethos. And so what I love about something like Bitcoin Well, where it's non-custodial, is there is no holding it on the exchange. And I think when you hold your Bitcoin on the exchange, that's just another IOU. And we see a lot of paper Bitcoin, I think. And so those are my thoughts on that. And I'm all for helping people understand self-custody.
Yeah, I think that is probably the best way. I think the funny thing there is, okay, you do need to understand that, you know, you need to have your own wallet. What does that mean, etc. Right? So I honestly don't really have an answer to this question. I was just also really wondering what you think. I just see that there's a challenge there, and it is really kind of depending on the level, or kind of like the step of where people are with regard to actually understanding if the Bitcoin they're holding is actually there, right? In essence, fake Bitcoin doesn't really exist, but you can only check that if you actually have it in self-custody with a Bitcoin wallet on the Bitcoin network, right? And so I sometimes see people that buy Bitcoin on this like eToro or Plus 500 type of trading platforms, and I don't even know if that's actually Bitcoin, right? Or if you would be able to get the Bitcoin out of there. I don't know how they work. But I also think, you know, like it's just part of the education. Maybe about that, I think at least that's my geriatric millennial idea of Gen Z. I think Gen Z, well, millennials are about status, but I think Gen Z is perhaps a bit more about status, right? Like what you wear, where you go, and showing that on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, right? It's kind of like a signal of your values. And I think that's interesting because when we talk philosophically about money, or for example, I talked with Seb Bunny, and he said like money is a way to communicate or to express what you think is valuable. Right. So if you spend money on something, you basically say, well, I find that valuable enough to basically exchange my time and energy to acquire, you know, whatever you think is important and or has value, and you show that to others. Right. But I think, you know, currently we have status symbols that are like Birkin bags or Travis Scott Jordans or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll have a future where proof of work, stacking sats, etc., becomes like a status symbol, where Bitcoin becomes a status symbol, where enough people understand that this is the scarcest monetary asset in the world, and that when you own it, you know, I use this argument with some millionaires I met, right, and saying like, oh, well, do you know how many millionaires are in the world, right? 60 million. Oh, well, do you know how many Bitcoin there are? 21 million. Okay, so do you meet other millionaires? And they're all like, yeah. And I said, well, you know, if someone says I have this new Porsche, then you can say like, well, do you have a Bitcoin?
How many Bitcoins do you have?
Yeah, how many Bitcoin do you have? So, do you think that'll change in the future? I don't know if it's necessarily smart to say how many Bitcoin you have, but more the whole ethos, ideology part around this.
Yeah, I think definitely in the future we're already starting to see. I mean, I see a lot of memes about like my generation buying Bitcoin. It's like, oh, you know, it's like Porsches and Corvettes are not as impressive anymore as how many Bitcoins you have. And so I think we're definitely going to see a slight decline in the flashiness, if you will, that my generation has been a part of. I especially think too, this goes a little bit deeper. I think that because we have broken money and because we're in this deficit, you know, in the US, a lot of our goods are trash. Like the quality is awful. And so I think because of that, we're going to see a decline in the desire to obtain those goods. And I think that people are slowly starting to really value higher quality goods. And I think that that's something that Bitcoin teaches, is like, because we have this scarce asset, you don't just blow your money on anything anymore. Honestly, like Bitcoin cured my shopping addiction, because I realized like I was just, you know, when I was in high school, I loved just shopping at the mall on the weekends and just spending money on dumb things, because it's just like that instant gratification. And I think that Bitcoin teaches the complete opposite of that, because when your money is scarce and it's gaining value, maybe not this last year, but over, you know, on the long term, in the 5, 6, 10 years, it's appreciating. You stop and think before you make a purchase. And I think that because of that, we're now incentivized as Bitcoiners to only purchase higher quality goods and think about that like long term, adopt that long term mindset when it comes to even something like, I don't know, a purse, say, for example, or shoes. You're not as incentivized to be like, oh, let me just spend like, let me get the $50 cheap option. You're like, no, like buy it once, buy the good quality, and it'll last a lot longer. And so I think because of that, and because of the nature of the deficit and just the fiscal situation in the United States, we're going to see a lot more people, I think, drifting away from that flashy, cheap brand mentality.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, because I already think that once you become more aware of this, for example, that's already half the battle. Because then you start to realize, okay, before this I was kind of incentivized to be this consumer, but now I'm deciding to, I always say like be a builder, right? Like, so if you want to do something that takes time and space and energy to attempt, then like by definition, that's not a fleeting thing. So you have to be conscious about what you are going to do and have the capital, however much you think you need in order to attempt it, but also to survive a possible failure. And possibly, you know, the possibility of failure is quite high if you're an entrepreneurial person and want to try different things, right? So I already think like becoming more aware of how you make those choices, and then kind of reflecting back, and maybe that's where the humble part comes in, where you realize, well, where was I before? I actually said this to someone today. Like I have no clue 20 to 25 where I was with my mind. I have no clue. Yeah. I don't have any. I don't have a lot of memories. I definitely don't know what I was thinking or how I was thinking. And it's obviously funny because now I'm reflecting on how, you know, I'm thinking and reflecting on how I was thinking. And so it's funny to also understand that, you know, I kind of changed over time. So I also think it's very cool that at your age you are doing that, because I think that is a very positive thing. I think in my generation, there's still a lot of people that are not doing that and also don't, I want to say, see that it is a challenge. Yeah. But it's a very rewarding thing to do, because it actually shows you all the, I think a lot of how do you say that, like a lot of places where you're lacking the critical thinking or the conscious thinking, which is not a bad thing, right? It is not a nice feeling in the beginning, but after that, I think you actually feel, I don't like this word, but like more empowered, like you feel more in control. Absolutely. Actually. Yeah.
And I think too, one of the things I learned after studying Bitcoin was like, you learn how to just like adopt a completely different mindset. Like, I feel like now I'm trained to really question all the incentives behind things. Whereas like in school, you're kind of taught, you know, for me, I started school at age 3, graduated with my master's at 23. And so you're in school for 20 years, and it's like you're taught to just follow the rules, follow the order. It's always been this way, be compliant. And I think Bitcoin really incentivizes you to think the opposite. And it's like, no, like let's step back and question this and not be defiant in like a bad way, but in like, it doesn't always have to be this way. Like I hated it when in college when professors would say like, oh, well, 2.5% inflation is just, that's the metric because it's always been that way. And it's like, well, why? Like, how did this start, you know? And so, yeah, I think it's interesting how much Bitcoin can change a person.
So when you think about the future and you know, having this whole career in front of you, all your peers having their I'm saying career in air quotes. I don't know what a career is or what that looks like or how people think about that nowadays. I think with AI and kind of like the economic instability, or at least some sort of shift in finance and economics with an ending world reserve currency and multipolarity, etc. I think just the whole context of the time we're living in already brings a lot of uncertainty, insecurity. What do you think is the career of the future, and also how does Bitcoin play into that? Do you think there might be, for example, a time where your peers decide that working for sats is way smarter than working for dollars, or like, do you have any ideas around that?
Yeah,
like the next 10 years for you or for your peers, and then you're still younger than me in 10 years. So and what I am now.
Yeah, I think when it comes, so I guess there's like two questions there. When it comes to career, I think we're actually going to see less and less more individualized career like specializations. A lot of times right now, people like myself, I went to school for business economics, and I also studied marketing. I think that even just in the job that I have now, yes, I do marketing, but I've slowly become more of a generalist because of all of the AI tools that we have. AI is now able to help 10x my output. And so I've become this like person that is using these tools to solve a lot of problems in the different companies that I work for, the different groups. And so I think that in the next, even like 5 years, I don't even think 10 years, I think 5 years, this like AI is going to force everybody to learn these skills. And like, who would have thought, 5 years ago that prompt engineering was like a role that you could get 6 figures for. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of these roles pop up where it's like, you're kind of just expected to really understand problem solving and critical thinking more than, be really good at finance or really good at marketing or really good at, name it, whatever specialization that you went to school for. And so I think because of that, we're going to see a lot of job losses, lots of layoffs. I think that's just inevitable. But I think that there's an opportunity for my generation right now. If you just take the time to learn these new tools, learn these new AIs that are popping up, you are going to set yourself up for success and be able to provide value to these corporations that are going to be looking for those skills. And so to your second question, are people going to realize that it's more valuable to work for sats and not for dollars? I would hope so. I mean, for me, as soon as I understood Bitcoin, I only worked in the normie world for 6 months, quit my job, and like was determined to find a job in the Bitcoin space and get paid in Bitcoin. And that's where I'm at now. And so I think the more people we see understand broken money and that their dollars are losing value, I think that's when we are really going to start to see more people want to get paid in Bitcoin. And we're starting to see this with athletes, and I'm hoping that their voice only amplifies the Bitcoin message.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, I think what we also mentioned, people want to be like influencers and stuff like that, and they want, quick wins, get rich quick, etc. I think there's a lot of, like I said, I'm playing the YouTube game. Like I want to have good, interesting, inspiring conversations, but people still need to click, right? Yeah. So I think I think that game is actually quite difficult because there's a lot of people that are like, finfluencers, and they promote, crazy products, shit coins, whatever, quick fig, get rich quick type stuff, or at least the hopium around that. How can we build a community of high integrity Bitcoin advocates, you think, that can actually compete with all the flashy, ephemeral, high dopamine noise stuff. Should we try to compete, or should we just, play the game, stay boring and safe?
I don't think boring and safe. No, I am completely against that. I would not call myself a boring and safe person. And I think most people in this space are the complete opposite of that. So most of the people I've met in the Bitcoin space just have like this eccentric personality. I think that we shouldn't be trying to compete with the finfluencers. You can't really compete because they're all about the arbitrage. And that's just not what I'm about, or really what Bitcoin's about. And so it's definitely hard to compete. I would say we have to almost create this whole other world, kind of like we've already done. There's this whole echo chamber on X and YouTube and Instagram of Bitcoiners. And I think that's probably the most efficient way to really orange pill the masses. I think the problem with the finfluencers is they're gonna, sell their soul for a paycheck. They're desperate for the arbitrage and for the get rich quick. Whereas I think not all, but a majority of Bitcoiners have a bit more morals and wouldn't do that and wouldn't feel right about promoting something that doesn't align with either what they believe in or what Bitcoin stands for. And so, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I work for Adam O'Brien, and he has a YouTube channel. We do like live streams. And so I totally get you with the trying to get the clicks and trying to get the thumbnail right and using the keywords and doing all the SEO to make the channel grow. But I think at the end of the day, Bitcoin is going to tell the story for itself. As much as we try to advertise and educate and influence, I think we should still do our part. But I think looking back in 3, 4, 5 years, we won't even have to. I think that the number will literally speak for itself.
Yeah, I also feel, and maybe you can share a bit about that. Like I talk a lot about the spiritual part of Bitcoin. I also think, in a sense, the whole proof of work ethos is also in what we are talking about now, right? Like, so
yeah.
I agree with you. Like, sometimes I see these things on YouTube, the screaming this and that, like, oh, it's going up, it's going down, something is going, oh, this is the next thing, or the whatever. And I just feel like I wouldn't even be able to do that every day.
Yeah.
Just to fill something with content, is just ephemeral, and you just want to get the click. So that spiritual part of just staying on the path. But the whole meme of stack sats, hone your craft, like do the thing, like keep the same direction, right? I think is a very important thing, because eventually, collectively, in this decentralized way, we're all putting our energy towards this one thing. For example, I see a lot of crypto guys on X now jumping on Claude bots, AI, this is what you can do and whatever, because crypto is fucking boring and like everything is a scam and nothing's happening anymore, right? So they're finding the next big thing. I personally think there's an opportunity there where we can actually like literally practice what we preach. Low time preference, put all our energy and our attention and our positive thoughts, love, whatever, however you want to define it, towards the creation of something together. And I just wanted to get your take on that. What do you think about perhaps the spiritual part of this journey?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a deep spiritual aspect to understanding Bitcoin. And once you study it, it's like you can't really avoid that, at least in my experience. And I think when it comes to the jumping onto that next thing, for me, I am super into following AI and what's happening with Claude and ClaudeBot and OpenAI and all the tools that we're seeing. But I think for me, the way I see it is like, I think Bitcoin is going to change the world because it's the best monetary system to ever exist, and it's the best asset to ever exist. I think AI is also going to change the world. And I think that when you're a Bitcoiner, we're seeing a lot of crossover with the Bitcoiners in AI, because we realize that we're seeing a turning here, and it's either you adapt and understand what's happening or you fall behind. And I think that as Bitcoiners, we understand like we're not going to fall behind with our money because we already invest in the best money there is. Now, the next thing is AI. Okay, how do we use these tools to maybe create proof of work. Like for me, I started a website / newsletter to kind of just like help people in my generation understand the macro landscape that we're in. And I used AI for the whole thing, everything. I don't have any technical background. I've never coded before. I've just vibe coded the site and did that for like a few months. And it, you know, I'm hoping helping people understand what could be somewhat complicated or confusing. And I think that as Bitcoiners, we should, you know, be adapting to this new environment and because it's growing super rapidly. And it's like, I don't see it as like chasing the hype, chasing that next thing just for like the clicks. I genuinely see it as like, this is changing the world and changing everything, literally everything. I think part of the reason why metals were ripping is because people are getting scared that, you know, AI is about to cut a lot of jobs. And with that comes the big print. And so I think that that's why, you know, people are turning to hard money. I think ultimately after this metals boom, Bitcoin is next because you know, it's just, to me, it's just inevitable that people are not going to understand Bitcoin the way that you and I understand it at some point once they realize that you can't just transfer your gold and your silver that easily. And Bitcoin's just so much better.
Yeah, I was literally arguing with people today, and people are like, "Well, you can sell physical gold when you go to a store, so easy, isn't it?" I said, "Well, dude, I can sell Bitcoin from wherever, you know." But that
exactly.
Apparently, that's still not enough to make people think. Well, whatever. But we'll have the time. We'll see. We'll get them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to wrap up with my last question, and I ask everyone the same question, which is, what is a core belief you will never let go of?
Core belief I will never let go of? I gotta take it back to my faith. My faith is how I operate, and without my faith, I think I would be a completely different person. I would be very lost. So core belief is that God is good and Jesus loves you, and that's something that completely changed my life. To be very transparent and vulnerable, I was when I was in high school, I did not really believe that and went through a really, really depressive episode where on paper, everything in my life was perfect. I was getting really good grades. I was playing 2 sports. I was done with my college applications. I was getting into good schools. And on the inside, I was just trying to like fill this void that only God could fill. And so for me, I would say that's kind of my core value that I wish everybody could adopt. And, you know, it takes that person going on their own journey to understand that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks so much for your time. I hope people find it valuable, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, if you want to help me shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, please like this video and subscribe to stay connected. I hope to see you for our next episode. Bye.